Alrighty, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Pink Panthers round one wrap up. It was pretty creative to think of that 20 minutes before coming on. We just wanted to take a look at the round one games and have a chat about the results and how everything went for week one. We didn't do opening round because I think I was still away, so we couldn't get access to a computer. But thought we'd do the round one. Now, obviously, the other game is still in process, the Freo and Lions game, so we'll just chat about that one as we get to it in a live sense. But how are you, Grock? What's going on, mate?
Not too much. I'm going well. A little bit warm out here in the office at the moment, but other than that, going well.
Yeah, I'm the same here. It's actually very, very hot out here, very steamy. But I think that's just a bit of a byproduct of having multiple days of hot temperatures. So there we go. All right. So the premise, I suppose, will just be, just making some comments and some judgment on the round so far. So we'll kick it off. Thursday night, we had Richmond versus Carlton. The Blues 12-14-86 defeated the Tigers 12-9-81, which I know we are both very, very shattered about. It was an interesting game, wasn't it? Because for all intents and purposes, the Blues should have beaten us by quite a bit more, I think. I actually thought we fought that game out quite well. But Paddy Cripps led the way with 31 disposals, Mitch McGovern 26, Hopper for Richmond 25, Loston 24, Sard 24, Newman 24, and Noah Bolter, who played a little bit of everywhere, was on 23.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a solid game, much like the Gold Coast game. It was really one quarter that did the damage for the Tigers. But yeah, with how the game panned out, with losing the players that we did to fight back against a top four and premiership contender. Super positive signs for the Tigers.
And what about the Blues? How do you see that type of win for the Blues? It was obviously some of their supporters have been pretty up and about, about the win, and it's 4 points in the bank, and that's all that really matters. Should they have expected more, or do you think there was some lingering effects from the big chase down of Brisbane the week prior?
If I was a Carlton supporter, I'd be a little bit concerned with how they've played. Obviously, against Brisbane, they looked poor in the first half. And then against let's be honest, a Richmond side who was missing two key defenders for the best part of half a game of footy, and they still only finished over the line from, a contentious 50-metre penalty and a Shea Bolton sort of misreading of the ball. I'd be pretty concerned about Carlton at the moment if I was their fans. They haven't looked convincing.
No, they're obviously missing Walsh as well, who sounds like he's still got some back issues, which is no good. But Mackay and Curnow still look dangerous, as always. Dill, welcome. Tamalio, welcome. Hope you're doing well. Up the Roos. The Roos, didn't do too bad. But, not ideal outcome for the Tigers and the Blues. Put one in the bank. All right, second game. Who was up next? Collingwood to Sydney.
Sydney look impressive, don't they?
They do.
They absolutely torched the Pies. The one thing that stands out with them is their kicking. They were never the greatest kicking side, Sydney. They were very much a contested side and just grind their way up. But bringing Campbell in, bringing Goulden in, all these types of younger players, Warner, they just look so clean going forward of the football, and they look so much better now than they did when Buddy was playing, which is, I think with Buddy no longer up there, it makes them a lot harder to be predictable going forward, and it's starting to show on the scoreboard as well.
And the move of Heaney to the midfield as well, I know that was maybe a little bit, I don't want to say by accident, but because Taylor Adams obviously out with injury, I think if you're Longmire, you're going to find it very hard to remove him from the middle. I think he's more than shown his worth over the last couple of games. He just runs all day. Like, he's got unbelievable fitness, Isaac Heaney, and he's got good goal sense too. 29 disposals, 2 goals. What a return.
Yeah, absolutely freakish. And I think on the opposite side of things, I think it just shows how important that Nick Dacos is to the Pies. When he was off in the second quarter, which is when Sydney really put a run on, he was on the bench for 7 minutes, and in the 7 minutes that he was off, Sydney scored 4 goals. Collingwood just couldn't get their hands on the ball. So, I think it just highlights the reliance on Dacos already in his third year.
And you got big Logan McDonald up forward and Amadi for the Swans. I actually really liked Amadi's game. He had some really good one grab marks across the ground that's relieved a bit of pressure for him. But Logan McDonald pops up and kicks for. And I suppose to your point with Buddy not being there, that there was maybe a small period of time where people thought, no Buddy, no Sydney, how are they going to cope without him? But they've obviously found their targets.
Absolutely. And I think the Pies will be thanking their lucky stars that Sydney weren't super accurate in front of goal. They missed a lot of easy shots. That could have easily been a 10-goal loss for the Pies. So I think they'll be counting their lucky stars that Sydney missed a few of the gettable ones.
So what was our final score? 15-12. Okay, 15-12, 102 to 10-9, 69. So 33 points, still a big margin. Lockie Schultz in his first year at the Pies. How have you seen his start so far? He had 10 disposals, 2 goals. He's obviously made the most of it, I suppose, in some capacity. But I feel like that the Pies supporters are wanting a bit more.
I believe he didn't have a possession up until like halfway through the second quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, he was getting very heavily criticised at halftime on the commentary, considering what the Pies gave up for him. They gave up a first rounder for him. That sort of, looking at that deal, I think the Pies didn't make the right call there. A small forward for a first rounder, considering Schultz was previously delisted by Freo once before already, not exactly a great deal. So, yeah, I think he definitely needs to show more than what he did.
Yeah, well, I think Collingwood as a club need to show a bit more than what they're currently putting out. I know, they've obviously had to do a lot more in the back end of last season, winning the flag. They were obviously working harder for a lot longer. But how much do you read into their start of the season? They're 0-2, and they've just looked a bit off the pace, really, the first 2 games. But to be fair, GWS and Sydney are probably, top 6 teams in their own right as well.
Well, I saw a stat yesterday, I think it was, and it was something like in the last 25 years, the reigning premiers who have started 0-2 have not gone back to back.
Right. Okay.
The only one who, I think Melbourne started 0-2, and someone started 0-2 and then made a grand final and lost. But other than Sydney were the ones who made a grand final and lost, being 0-2. But everyone else, the last 4 of them have not made finals. So it doesn't necessarily bode well for Collingwood in that regard.
It is a long season, I guess. But, it's been an interesting start for them. So long may it continue. Next game we had was Essendon and Hawthorn. Essendon 17-5, 107 defeated the Hawks 11-17, 83 by 24 points. The Hawks were reading this up in their eyeballs. They just couldn't, like watching the game, they would kick a goal and Essendon would kick one back within the next 30 seconds. They just couldn't keep them at bay for any more than a couple of minutes after they goaled.
Yeah, it seems like Hawthorn's defensive structures would sort of reset and stop once they'd kicked the goal. They weren't completely switched on. They'd switched off, and Essendon would respond quickly. And the inaccuracy doesn't help. I mean, 11-17 is pretty poor in that regard as well. So they'd definitely be wanting to. I dare say there'll be a lot of goal kicking practice at training over the next week or so.
Looking at the possession getters, Andrew McGrath for the Bombers had 33, Zach Merritt 31, D'Ambrosio for the Hawks 29 in his first appearance for the new club, Warple 28, Nick Martin 25, Setterfield 24, Perkins 24, Redmond and Connor McDonald 22. But Andy McGrath's an interesting one. I felt like this year he's needed to show a little bit more. Like I think it's now his time to step up. He was he number 1 pick? He was number 1, wasn't he? Yeah, so he's now got to start showing his worth and really be an integral part of this Essendon midfield alongside Merritt.
Absolutely. He's the one that we highlighted during the preseason shows that we did was McGrath for Essendon was the one that needed to step up. Obviously, he's been thrown all over the park. He's gone through the midfield, half back. He's played on the wing a little bit. I think he needs to find a settled position, and I do think his best position is probably as that halfback flanker where he can use he's got a decent kick on him. He's very reliable with his skills, and I think that's where Essendon tend to transition a lot from his halfback. So I think that's his best position. But yeah, coming out of that game, obviously you've got I believe he's the captain, Sicily, but yeah, copping a 1 week suspension. Not a good look in your first game.
But, apparently that was for kicking McGrath. I must have blinked when that happened. When did it happen?
It was like a minute into the game, first quarter.
Really?
Yep.
Jesus, yeah, I must have been dealing with the kids. Was it like blatantly obvious, the kick?
Yeah, it was dodgy. As soon as it happened, all the Essendon players swarmed on Sicily. So, yeah, it wasn't a good look.
And speaking of Sicily, I mean, that part aside, he had an absolute stinker of a game, really. How much, yeah, does he need to fire week in, week out for the Hawks to win games? I actually don't think he does. I think he's relatively important, but if he does have a shit one, I still think they've shown enough that they can win games without him having to fire.
They can. They showed that last year when he was out that they could win games or at least be competitive. But I do think he's probably their number one defender. And yeah, like he generally needs to have a very good. He needs to have a solid 7.5 or 8 out of 10 rated game for them to be a chance, I reckon.
Yeah, and they have lost a few defenders along the way, haven't they? They've been smashed a bit. What did you make of Marbia Troll's game?
He competed well. Obviously, I think he kicked 2 goals too, and then got subbed out as a tactical sub. Obviously, it was pretty warm over the last couple of days in Melbourne, so obviously being a tall, they probably went for a little bit more leg speed. But yeah, I thought he was solid. I mean, it was a typical Marbior game, like faded in and out, but when the ball was in the air, he competed well. Converted his chances when he got them, missed 2 that he might want to have kicked. But other than that, like, is exactly what Hawthorn needed, was just a forward to compete while Lewis, recovers and finds his legs again after missing so much football.
And what about Zersma with his first game for the Bombers, and also Mackay playing down back?
Yeah, I think Mackay did pretty well. Typical game. Dersma, again, new system. The type of player that he is, he's always going to take a little time to find his feet. He had some nice moments, and I think this is something to build on for him. But again, he needs to find a settled position. Half forward or wing, I think, is where he's best suited. And that's where I reckon the Bombers will play him going forward.
All right. GWS and the Kangaroos. GWS 17-19, 121. Defeated the Roos 13-4, 82 by 39 points. What did you make of their game?
The Giants absolutely smashed them through the midfield. That was where they really dominated. I mean, Tom Green, what more can you say? Like, absolute beast of a midfielder, absolutely tailed them up. Jesse Hogan, 6 goals, severely underrated. And I think having Aaron Cadman up there now, who's put on a little bit more weight, you can tell he's physically a lot stronger. He's able to stand in contests now without being pushed aside. That's really going to help Hogan. Cornelio had a very solid game. Josh Kelly had a very solid game. Yeah, I thought it was a comfortable win for the Giants, but the Kangaroos really did show some really promising signs. Obviously, McKercher looked really, really solid.
He did.
So I think I think both sides will be happy with what they showed. I don't think either side will come away disappointed with anything out of that game.
Yeah, you mentioned Tom Green, 37 disposals, 6 clearances, 9 tackles. He's just a beast. Another similar to Heaney, one of those players who just runs and runs and runs, and no one can actually keep up with him getting contest to contest, and that's why he gets so much ball. Harry Sheasel for the Roos, I thought was very, very good. From a super coach perspective, to watch Sheasel and McKercher wax the ball behind play was good, but I won't be shocked if Sheasel starts to spend more time in the midfield as the year gets on. I think he's too good of a player to spend too much time at halfback. Although no disrespect to the Roos, but the ball is probably going to spend a little bit of time down there while they develop and grow through this game plan. But the young kids are pretty exciting. And I do think that in a couple of years, they will find themselves shooting back up the ladder.
Absolutely. I mean, you think of it, you've got Wardlaw, you've got McKercher, you've got Sheasel. They're going to have a very, very good midfield brigade in 3 or 4 years' time if they manage to hold on to all of them.
And what did you think of Toby Pink's performance? He was playing local footy not that long ago, and he's in amongst it, playing as a defender at AFL level. Yeah,
I thought he had a solid game. Obviously, a mature age. He did have one horror moment where he coughed up a goal that didn't need to happen. again, I think that was just first game nerves, jittery, and the pressure of the Giants. But yeah, I think he'll be solid, and he's the type of player that North Melbourne need right now. Is that mature ager coming in, a bit of an older body to help the younger players develop. And yeah, I'm not sure if he'll be a player for North Melbourne in 10 years' time, but for the next 3 or 4 years, he'll be solid for them.
Yeah. Chesa, welcome in the chat. And actually, one sort of in relation to you, Ches. Jake Riccardi, who I know you picked for our Supercoach team, he had a decent outing as well. Just on the quick transition that the Giants were able to get on the counter-attack, he was able to work really well into space inside their forward 50. Kicked 3 goals too, 10 marks. I think that's a pretty good day out.
Yeah, a very, very good game.
Next game, who do we have there? Next game we had another nail-biter, Geelong versus St Kilda. The Cats 10-16-76 defeated the Saints 9-14-68 by 8 points. This one literally came down to the last kick of the game with Dangerfield taking a mark from just a blast kick from the Saints and converting truly. But, I mean, I thought the Saints were almost going to get him there at the end.
Yeah, that was a game where Geelong would be breathing a huge sigh of relief, and I think St Kilda will be feeling a little bit disappointed that they didn't actually pinch that. Yeah, Geelong, they're hard to gauge this year. Obviously, I think they're going to win more than they lose down at Skilled Stadium or GMHBA, whatever it is. But at the same time, I'm not sure that they'll be good enough to match a lot of sides at the MCG. So it's sort of hard to gauge where they're going to sort of finish. And performances like that, it was a very sloppy game, very a lot of missed tackles. Obviously, round one rust. So yeah, I think there's definitely something to build on there for the Cats. Saints, I think they'll work their way into the season nicely. They've got a very young list up and coming. So yeah, I think it was solid.
Riley Bonner led the way for all disposal with 28, Wanganeen Malira 25, Jack Steele 25. So the top 3 were all St Kilda players. Dangerfield 25, Max Holmes 23, Mitch Duncan 23, Tom Stewart 22, and Jeremy Cameron 21, who I thought kicked, I know it's early days, but he's definitely kicked a contender for goal. Goal of the year might be a stretch when it's all said and done, but it was a very, very good goal on the wrong side on the boundary line and just slotted it very nicely.
Yeah, who was the one from Adelaide? Was it Adelaide who copped the Falcon?
Sorry, you're right. That has to be winning.
Yeah, like, I mean, you look at it and it's like, did he really mean to do it? But at the same time, a goal's a goal. Like,
goal's a goal.
Yeah, but no, very, very good goal. I think Geelong, they need to find another midfielder because I'm not sure with Tom Hawkins looked very, very slow. And I think if they're going to make finals, they need Cameron as a forward. So I'm not sure how much him pushing up into the midfield, even though the club's given him a license. So I'm not sure how much that's really going to benefit them against the better clubs.
Now there's a couple of young kids playing. Jai Clark, his first game for the Cats, 13 disposals, 1 tackle. I thought that was that's as good as an introduction as you can hope for, I guess.
Well, it's a solid game. I think one of the better. Yeah, I think you could hope for a better game, but I think it's a good, solid game for a first gamer. Like average, can't expect much more.
And the other one who surprised, it wasn't his first game. I think it was about his 8th game. It was Oliver Dempsey, who popped up with 3 goals. I thought he looked really lively for the Cats at half forward.
And it's funny watching them, people confusing him with De Koning because of the hairstyle.
Yes, like absolutely.
The amount of times that they copped, De Koning, but it was Dempsey. Yeah, Dempsey is one that was very highly rated by the Cats prior to the draft, and they were absolutely stoked to get him. So yeah, I think he's shown some very positive signs, and I think by the end of the year, he'll be one that they're really, really high on.
Yeah, he looks super. Dill, no top 8 for the Cats in your books. Yeah, they're going to be very hit and miss, aren't they? I think to Grock's point, I think they'll win most of their home games at GMHBA, but it's when they start playing away that could be the issue. Pardon me. Next game on the list, we've got the Suns versus the Crows in another nail-biter. Gold Coast 8-12-60 defeated the Crows 8-6-54 by 6 points. Now, I must admit, when I was sort of seeing the scores for this early days, the Suns were just smashing him, and then it kind of must have come to a screaming halt later in the game, and the Crows almost pinched it.
Yeah, again, it was set up by their midfield. Rowell and Anderson absolutely smashed the Crows again. Rowell, he's the other one that we highlighted that needed to step up for the Suns if they were to go anywhere this year. And his first 2 games, I'm not sure you could ask for much more from him. Obviously, last week we know what he did. This week he backed it up again. Wasn't quite as prolific with the clearances or the amount of ball he got, but he absolutely smashed through the contest. And like 70-odd% of, well, not quite 70, I think it was like 67% of all of his possessions are contested, which is the highest in the league. And, if you've got a player who can win as much ball as he does and have it be 70% contested, it's going to go a long way for you to winning the contested ball and clearances. So he did really, really well. I think poor Sam Berry is going to have a little bit of heartache there, dropping a mark. I mean, it was a difficult ball, greasy, wet, overhead mark at 50. It's no chance, but still a chance that he probably should have taken and having a shot after the siren. But yeah, again, Suns just died in the second half. Crows sort of came back, sort of like what we did. They just couldn't find that steady like they did against us. Helps that they didn't get some of the dodgy umpiring decisions go their way against the Crows. I think, the Crows had a really good crack in that last quarter. They'd be disappointed with their first half, but the way that they fought back in the second was really, really good.
That's the thing. If they can put it together for 2 and a bit quarters, they probably walk away winners, really.
Yeah, no Phil Thorpe or Walker, made a difference as well.
Yeah, definitely. They're huge outs. Looking at disposal winners, Flanders had 35, Noah Anderson 35, Matt Crouch for the Crows 33, Rory Laird 30, Matt Rowell 29. He had 10 tackles and 9 clearances too. Trick Miller was good as well, 29 disposals. Jordan Dawson 26. Who jagged all the goals? Rochelle. I know we spoke about him a little bit last year on the Richmond show in particular, but he bobbed up and kicked 3. I think he and Rankin are going to be a very exciting forward combination to watch.
Yeah, Rankin reminds me so much of Shea Bolton early days, just that X-factor type that fades in and out. I think he needs to step up now. He's been in the system, 6 years now? Like, he needs to start being a lot more involved in games, especially when they don't have the ball. He really only seems to put effort in when he's a chance of getting the ball or when he's a chance to kick a goal. So, he's definitely one that needs to start putting consistency together. Otherwise, he'll be one of these players that we know has all the talent in the world but just didn't fulfill it.
Yeah, he's got talent in spades. Next game was today, the D's versus the Bulldogs. Melbourne 16-13, 109 defeated the Doggies 9-10-64 by 45 points. They absolutely smashed them. The Doggies, I did a ladder predictor, and I'm not sure about you, but I found the Doggies as one of the hardest teams to place because from a list perspective, they've got, I would say, above elite midfield. Their forward line's pretty good with Uhagan, Norton from a marking perspective, and their back line's not the worst. So for me, and we've said this for a while, I just don't think Luke Beveridge is the right coach. I think he's lost them. And I know it's only round 1, and that's probably a dramatic call, but I'm maybe more basing it over a couple of years.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the lead up to the game, obviously the Bulldogs dropped Jack McRae, who I think is one of their better midfielders, one of their better ball users.
Yep.
I question that decision. I think that was probably poor, especially as Melbourne midfield just ran over the top of the Dogs. Max Gawn was just so influential, absolutely dominated. It's always hard when you've got an opposition ruckman who's dominating a game as much as what Gawn did. You want your better midfielders playing, and for them to leave McRae out in hindsight, I think was probably the wrong call.
And not only did they leave McRae out, but Caleb Daniel was sub.
Yeah, who is their best ball user.
I when I saw that, I had to kind of reread it to make sure I was seeing the right thing. It just it doesn't make sense.
I mean, we talk about the the team selection and the match committee making mistakes, and they're two massive blunders from Bevo, in my opinion. Like, I'm not sure what he was thinking, and there'll definitely be question marks, I reckon, from the board and everything about why that happened this week. But yeah, I just think I agree that the Dogs, they're the two hardest teams for me to place this year are Melbourne and the Bulldogs. On paper, they should be top 6.
Yeah, I mean, the D's, and to be fair, I thought they might have self-imploded a little bit with the whole drug saga that's going on in Clayton Oliver and all that kind of stuff. But to be fair to Oliver, he sort of stepped back in pretty well. 35 disposals, Petrarca 29 disposals, Gawn 26 with 35 hitouts. He just was a monster all day. May 25. The other one, the surprising one for me, was Jack Billings, who I know last week started as sub for them and probably didn't have as much impact as the D's fans would have liked and as he would have liked. But his game today was really, really good. 23 disposals, 15 marks, 5 tackles. It's a pretty good return.
Absolutely. The one thing that he offers is he's got a decent kick. A lot of the Melbourne players generally aren't great field kicks. Billings, his kicking can be inconsistent, but for the most part, he's relatively reliable. And I think him being on the outside, hitting up, the forwards and everything like that, he's definitely going to be a strong addition to that Melbourne side. He's the replacement for Jaden Hunt, in my opinion.
Yeah,
they've missed Jaden Hunt the last couple of years, obviously, when he's gone to West Coast. So I think he'll slot back in Jaden Hunt's role and it'll be solid.
Courtside Cash on TikTok. Thoughts on D's for top 4? If they can keep playing like that, they will. I had some doubts about the team keeping together just in light of some of the shit that's gone on. But if they're able to put that to one side, I think they'll be laughing. So they've got some good young kids coming through as well. Caleb Windsor had another good game, 16 disposals. I think he got subbed out later on because it obviously quite a bit of hard work out there. But he had another pretty good game. And for the Dogs as well, Sanders, I thought, had a good game too.
Yeah, both young players showed why they're highly rated and why they were taken so high in the draft. So I think both clubs will be happy with what the youngsters showed.
And then Port Adelaide versus the Eagles. Port Adelaide did what they did best. Well, it wasn't without the Eagles scaring them at various stages. Port 16, 24, 120, which I believe is the largest amount of behinds they've ever kicked in a game. To the Eagles, 10, 10, 70, winning by 50 points. I mean, you look at the scoreline, at the end of the day, it was pretty comprehensive. But the Eagles had some good moments in the game, and I think they got within maybe 20 at one point, 20, 25. But the class of the Port Adelaide midfield was able to just put their foot down. And, our former Richmond ruckman, Biggie Van Soldo, I think played a super game. And we all called it a long way out that he was going to be very, very good and very important for them.
Yep. Soldo's last sort of 6 weeks for us last year were extremely good. Like, he added that ability to go forward rather than drifting back. The fact that he was able to go forward and get on the end of a couple of goals, I think he kicked 6 goals in his last 6 games for us, which was massive. And he did that again today for Port when everyone else was missing. He was there taking marks, 30 out, 35 out directly in front, and was nailing them dead center. So, I think I was reading the Port Adelaide Big Footy board, and they were absolutely wrapped with him, comparing him to Lysette and players like that, and they were wrapped with that. So, adding a decent ruckman who can run pretty much all day and compete well, go forward, kick goals, and tap the ball down to Rosie, Butters, Wines. They were missing Powell Pepper today, but their midfield will be scary if Soldo continues to do what he did today.
Yeah, and Soldo even drift forward and kick 2 goals as well. He's shown that I think he's increased his football IQ, which is probably a big part of his game. Absolutely. But their midfield, Rosie and Butters led the way again, 27 disposals each, 10 marks for Rosie as well. Ollie Wines, 23, Burton, 22 disposals, Bergman, 21. Highest for the Eagles was Yo on 20, and then Jaden Hunt, 20, that we mentioned earlier. But I suppose for the Eagles, it was probably all about Harley Reid, to be fair, making his debut, 16 disposals, 2 marks, 2 tackles, 5 clearances. I thought he looked clean. You sort of saw vision from the preseason games where he maybe struggled a little bit, but I thought he looked really good today.
Yeah, I mean, he's always gonna have his knocks. He can't be this highly rated and not have people for a first rounder who was so highly touted, he should have done more. Blah blah blah. I mean, Port Adelaide are a side that have made prelims 3 of the last 4 years, I believe. Like, it was always going to be a tough ask. I mean, West Coast, we know their history over the last 3 years. Him coming in, he's not going to be the absolute saviour that people thought he was. He's going to be a very good player in time. Today, it was one of the better debuts you're going to see. I mean, he was solid. He looked like he belonged. It looked like the pace didn't worry him too much. He did get caught once, but
that'll happen. That's okay.
It was him trying to create something, which I think people can overlook. If he had just been caught, being too slow to get a handball off, that's a bit different. But he got caught trying to break a line and set the Eagles up, which is completely different. So, yeah, I thought he was solid without being great.
Nakano sent through a thing that Freo have legit had 3 players go down to the same injuries that we had. Anyone got any more info there? Because we obviously haven't seen it, but we'll get to their game in a sec. So, the last player I want to speak about for West Coast was Andrew Gaff. Got subbed off. I don't think he was injured from what I could tell, but he didn't do a lot either.
4 disposals, I think he had,
and he wasn't injured, was he? It was just shit.
4 disposals, and he's on about $800,000 a year.
Crazy.
I mean, you'd be furious if you were the list manager and you got an output from a senior player like that.
Absolutely.
But the one that surprised me the most for West Coast today was Jack Petruccelli. He was their main target inside 50. They've got Oscar Allen up there, but he was the number one target going forward. They were lowering the eyes and hitting Petruccelli up on the lead. And I think last I saw, they went to him like 60% of the time they went forward, which for me was interesting considering that they had Allen. I think with Zerk Thatcher, Radagalia, and Alir, obviously they had a feeling that Allen was going to get double teamed, so I think it was smart for them to start lowering their eyes.
It's not a bad theory, really, because that would have been far too predictable going to Oscar Allen every time. Richo Man Gaff is washed up. Yeah, he's had a bit of a nightmare, hasn't he? Dill, thoughts on Almighty Van? I think he's going to work wonders for Power. He was very, very good for him today. So wish him nothing but the best. But I kind of wish we still had him too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on record and said if it came down to it, I would have much rather traded Nankervis over Ivan Soldo last year. I'm on record saying that in the pod last year, and I still stand by it.
He'll be good. And because you've got a gun midfield as well, you're going to get some good service.
Yeah.
All right, last game, which is still in play at the moment. I mean, not very often we'll be doing a show at 9:20 and there'll still be a game on a Sunday night. But Fremantle and Brisbane, Freo currently 11,975 are winning against Brisbane 7,951 by 30 points. The opening 5 minutes of this game, Grock, the Lions just went bang, bang, bang. And I was like, oh, shit, this could be lights out here for Freo and they could kick on here. But to Freo's credit, they've seriously steadied the ship and they've obviously put their foot down and gone ahead.
To be fair, 2 of the goals that Brisbane scored in that thing came from 50-metre penalties.
True.
Freo were pretty poor discipline-wise early to start the game, and it just didn't need to happen. But, yeah, since then, obviously, it's now 81-51. Freo just scored another one. I mean, it's warning signs now for the Lions, surely. I mean, to start 0-2 against, Carlton, there'll be question marks about why they faded last week.
Sure.
And there'll be question marks against the Lions going into a game against Fremantle and being, 24 points up and now losing by 30 deep into the last quarter. Against the time we should have beaten.
Especially with their list, I mean, I think we all feel that they should win, or they should have been winning all of their home games. And it was going to be a question of how will they go on the road. Now, this one, and this is no disrespect to Fremantle, but they should have been able to get the job done versus Fremantle. They're probably one of the away teams they should be able to account for, if we're looking list versus list perspective. But yeah, interesting game of football. But looking at the possession winners, Caleb Sarong has gone absolutely bananas here. He's up to 40, just clicked over 40 disposals, 6 marks, 6 tackles, 10 clearances. For anyone who's got him in Supercoach, you will be laughing. Someone on my TikTok has him as captain. He's going to be shitting it in this week. Luke Ryan, 30. James Ace, 25. For the Lions, Dunkley, 24. Hayden Young, 23. Brayshaw, 23. McCluggage, 21. Who we got goal kickers? Jai Amos, 4 goals. Treacy, 3 goals. Hipwood, 3. Zorko, 1. Walters, 1. Swikowski, 1. McCarthy, 1. Jackson, 1. Frederick Danaher, Brennan Cox, Banfield, Bailey. How many goal kickers are there? All 1 each. But it's a like. Have we underestimated Freo, or have Brisbane shit the bed? Like, what is it? Just a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both. Obviously, Alex Pearce is a super important piece of the Freo puzzle, and so is Josh Tracy. I mean, they've both had so many injury concerns that they haven't been able to stay on the park. But when they have, Freo have looked pretty solid. So, I think the fact that you got Fife back, who's got 19 or 20 possessions already, and he's looking solid. I think we've underrated Freo, but I also think that the Lions have shit the bed a little bit with their lineup, the players that they have. Obviously, Coleman's going to be a massive loss because he's filling the Rich role, and we know how important Daniel Rich was to setting Brisbane up from half back. But when you bring players in like McKenna, Dunkley, Danaher, these sorts, you're loading up for a flag. 100%. And for them to start 0-2 is not a great look.
No. All right, well, we'll keep watching that one with interest. Before we finish up, the Teal Deal, how are you, mate? What's going on? Just want to state the obvious. The Port Adelaide should have beat West Coast by a minimum 110 points. The inaccuracy was horrendous. It was. I think we said before that it was the most behind you've kicked against any opposition ever in your history. But, I mean, at least you're generating chances, and at least it didn't bite you in the ass. So that is a positive of some kind. But, I think Port Adelaide are going to be very dangerous in the weeks to come. Well, we've got them this week at the G.
It's an ongoing thing with Port Adelaide, though, is inaccuracy. They were the most inaccurate side last year and had the worst conversion rate inside 50. So, again, I think it's just more of the same under Ken Hinkley, what we saw today. Just poor goal kicking. It's an issue that Hinkley's focused a lot on during the preseason, but again, just doesn't seem to have translated.
Bad kicking is bad football. All right, well, that is a wrap. I know the game's still going, so Freo is still up by 35. Is the last quarter only just started, or am I reading that clock wrong? No, it's going up now. I swear to God that was going down just a moment ago.
There's probably like 6 minutes left.
Okay, 7. I thought it was going down. Sarong's up to 41. Jesus, he's on fire. But that is it for round 1 wrap-up. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. I'll be back on Twitch in a matter of moments to chat a bit of Supercoach and maybe play some AFL, do some music, whatever it might be. But Grock, thank you for jumping on, mate. Much appreciated. Getting your thoughts as always.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
No dramas. And we will see everybody shortly for the normal Pink Panda stream on Twitch. I've almost